Good afternoon and welcome to the session. I'm Ana Laura Elizondo on behalf of the FEMSA Foundation and the organizers of the event. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this session where we shall focus in the American continent, part of the Water Week. I'm Laura Elizondo heading this session. We shall hear presentations in English and Spanish. Hence, those of you that are here in person, please use the Interprefy app to be able to select the language of your choice. The number of the session is 11885. For our virtual attendees, you can choose the language that you wish, clicking on the corresponding button on the platform. We shall be exploring the importance of innovation in climate resilience and its impact in transborder waters. We shall begin with a few words of Sergio Campos, head of the IDB, the Division for Water and Sanitation. He shall give us a general outlook concerning challenges and opportunities in the region. Hello to everyone. Good afternoon. I wish to welcome you all to this last session focusing on the Americas. This is a theme that we have been summoned to talk about something so important, which are the transporter basins. As Tomás was reminding us during the opening, for Latin America, we cannot talk about water security without talking about transporter matters. It's essential concerning climate change, not only for economic development in the region, because more than 60% of energy is from hydroelectrical power, and 80% of our agriculture is through precipitation, and our exports depend much on agricultural crops. Hence, water is an engine for economic development, and water aspects are crucial. But we've seen how droughts and floods, which are more intense and frequent, and by the way, this is something that we have been saying over 10 years since the start. So we see that this is key to be able to assure the well-being of our population. In other words, people that lose family members, people that lose their cars, furniture, and homes, in other words, and floods should not be, or rather torrential precipitation shouldn't be economic losses. Hence, drought should not be a lack of drinking water. Hence, beyond this, here at CIWI, we have been learning from other regions things like, for example, that peace, which is something which is worthwhile struggling, as was said before. Water can be a source of peace, but it can also be a source of conflict. Other things that we have seen in the other seminars is that water can be a mechanism to improve reports, but also we have to unpackage collaboration, because if it's not properly managed, of course, it can make us see conflicts. So before carrying out an infrastructure project, everybody lived well, but those that lived in the lower part of the river stopped receiving water. They couldn't raise their cattle, neither agriculture, so they lost their subsistence means. Hence, we have to be very careful in concerning the planning of infrastructure. We need to have a broader and global focus. We have seen as well how agencies in charge of these basins, many have been around for thousands of years, like, for example, the Rhine in the Danube. At present, they're saying that work does not stop. And with climate change, we have to improve the different types of interventions that take place. And we also see that all the agreements that took place before, basically, those treaties were for navigation. At present, they're being strengthened. They're requesting greater measurements, greater resolution of conflicts, and a greater exchange of data. And solutions upstream are not sufficient, nor the right ones to be able to take care of the needs that's happening. Therefore, the participation of the people involved is extremely important, the affected parties as well in the different agreements, for these to be more effective. And the importance as well to be able to communicate, and to communicate through stories, through videos, through photos, so that those large disasters that we have seen because of a lack of action, for these not to be replicated in other locations. So more or less, this is a summary of the things that we have been learning, the things that we have been seeing, not only thanks to the session here in the Americas, but also the sessions where we have participated, watching the realities in other regions. And for the bank and for us as a region, the lessons learned are the importance of continuing generating data, reliable data, which will allow a proper planning, early warning systems, and also the importance of strengthening our agencies, our regulatory frameworks, institutions that we have, like, for example, the Tefino, the OTCA, and institutions like Titicaca and Bermejo, and many more others. Tomas reminded us at the start that simply in Central America, in such a small region, there are 28 basins and 48 enterprises. Hence, the importance of strengthening our human capital between borders, to feel that we're brethren because of the main source or the same source of water, and the need to strengthen our projects and their funding for feasibility, but with a more global and holistic outlook, but crucially with the participation of the affected parties. With no further ado, once again, I cordially welcome you to this last session of this forum, and maybe the last takeaway, which is the purpose of this session, is that if we have any option or to be able to face climate change, it's through technology, which will allow us to foresee the impact or the severity with which climate change will be reaching us, of course, in a more clear manner than in the past. Well, thank you kindly. Well, thank you, Sergio. Thank you for those inspiring words. As you said, collaboration is crucial to be able to manage in an efficient manner these transporter basins and to overcome the shared challenges in the region. And now it's an honor to introduce Dr. Vapon Fakrubin. He shall be talking about the importance of innovation concerning climate resilience and its crucial role in management and funding concerning transporter water. He's an expert on climate experience with over 22 years of experience concerning the reduction of disasters and adaptation to climate change. At present, he heads the sector of water with the Green Fund for Climate, overseeing climate investments in vulnerable countries. He has worked in key roles at the UN and multilateral banks, promoting early warning systems and management concerning climate risks. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maybe everyone is a little bit tired of the last session for the day. My Spanish is terrible, so I don't want to try even on talking on Spanish. It's been a pleasure to be here today. My name is Bapan Fakrudin. I work for Green Climate Fund. We'll be talking a little bit on this particular theme that has been set out, how we can actually bridging the border or flowing the forward, harnessing the technology and diplomacy for transboundary water harmony. And obviously, as you just hear from the Sergio, that water diplomacy is a very critical element. And as we actually share all the water between the upstream versus downstream, a cooperation is quite mandatory. Cooperation is needed to support each other, saving our lives as well as livelihood. But in generally, when you try to look at the overall system, the attribute or interconnectedness and cascading risk that we are facing, it's very complex. So if you try to look at it in an overall dimension-wise, you can see here is actually we put together a 6 dimension. So that means when you're looking at climate change, You're looking at actually what is happening today, what is happening tomorrow, what is happening 6 months, year, maybe up to the century when none of us will be here. But at the same time, so you're looking at actually, because climate change is not you creating, it's actually happening throughout the globes. So someone is actually emission, other is actually affecting. So how we actually look at from the local versus global interaction. But then there is also interconnectedness. And as well as there are actually different system dynamics. So how actually our inter versus international actually things are actually interconnected, that is actually quite complex. And bringing additionality with the climate, it makes us actually more challenging. And then if you top up one more addition, a diplomacy, where nobody has a control, and that could create actually a catastrophic disaster. And you may have already faced that one, because as Americas, if you just look at, you share so much transboundary rivers. And if you also learn from the other part of the world where actually Mekong Delta or Brahmaputra, you can see actually how this upstream versus downstream are actually creating a challenge between the countries or controlling over time. So it requires a sort of like a partnership. It requires some sort of collaboration, a human-centric work design between the countries when it comes to water, because we share common goods. We need to share common data. We need to taking care of each other. So a partnership is the key to looking at water management, or what we are talking about, integrated water management into the transboundary river perspectives. But then again, we are talking here about technology, innovation, but actually what does it mean to us? Because if you just look at about the innovation in terms of technology, it will not serve our purpose because we have fundamental challenges in a systemic way. So you need to be looking at innovation into the policy. You need to be looking at the innovation into your economics. You need to be looking at the innovation in your science, which we are quite heavily driven at this moment. But how actually you also bring innovation into our policy framework. If we don't able to integrate the innovation and technology into all these perspectives, we'll not be able to actually achieve what we actually want to achieve collectively. Just giving a picture of a transboundary river, which is a Brahmaputra and Meghna in Bangladesh, which comes from over India and Nepal and China. Over the last week, you saw that actually a country like Bangladesh is actually quite well known for their sophisticated long lead forecasting for flooding, so that actually they could save millions of people's lives. But when it's actually transboundary issue, you don't manage everything unless actually the data has been shared, the situation has been well understood. So once you are not actually sharing your data ecosystems, the information, even though you have a technology in one country, you cannot actually control over the aspect because you don't know actually how much water is coming throughout your neighboring countries. And when it actually putting through a barrage or Suez gate, that's even unknown because no model in the world are able to actually predict such kind of scenario. And such event actually create 5 million people, homeless. And I'm originally from Bangladesh, but then I switched to lived in Canada, and then I became a Kiwi in New Zealand. But my heart also actually looks to Bangladesh. And my four grandfather house was also flooded with this last week event. So that's we all need to be understand because if we are in the upper riparian, we need to be a little bit care about the lower riparian. And also if you share our data ecosystems, then actually the overall the technological aspect, innovation aspect can actually properly work through that kind of diplomacy. But also actually when you have those data ecosystems or technology, how much of those kind of science and information is actually comes to the operational domain is quite important. And you will see actually many of the science and technological information or innovation actually doesn't translate what does it means to us as a community, as an individual, or as a sector. So that is actually quite important to bridging those science between the policy versus to the application at the ground level. And when you try to looking at that kind of aspect, there are a lot of challenges and barriers for accessing climate financing or financing itself as well. Because when you're talking about climate finance, water sector actually face quite enormous additional challenges. So we need to be look at on those aspects that how actually we understand how much climate is actually impacting our watershed. And in that perspective, you really need to understand the integration as well as how the natural system is working, how our social ecosystem is working, as well as how our administration system is working to packaging such kind of program. And often when we like to design a project for water within the Transboundary River, we need to understand the overall water security aspect, because often actually we misunderstand what does it means to a water security. If I'm a water utility, that is my water security. If I'm actually on the forecasting side, we think about that's our water security aspect. So in GCF, we try to a little bit more focus on actually how we can create a more comprehensive system to generate a water security program through different innovation technology as well as innovative financing system. But overall, the things need to be looked at more on the risk angle, because unless you understand your risk based on the climate hazard or climate narratives, using your vulnerability and exposure, you'll not be able to reflect what kind of intervention or what kind of activity you need to be look at your transboundary level or at your country level or at your community level. But also we need to be understand actually how we create water as an asset class, because we often actually doesn't value water, how much value actually it brings to us. So that is quite important actually to look at actually water, how we value water and how we actually use water as a technology as well as asset class to enhancing our water security perspectives. Accessing also financing requires how we understand actually the impact potential of in a water project, but also due to the climate change, we need to understand what are the paradigm shifts we are actually bringing into the community. What is innovation we are actually bringing, but also how much sustainable those kind of solution to match with the local needs as well as ownership of the community, and how much actually, because at the end of the day, you will be investing your money, and you need to know as a policymaker how much actually worth your $1 investment, the benefit that you are bringing at the community scale or at the national scale. So that's basically my talk today. Hopefully, we are able to have a greater cooperation using a diplomacy as well as innovation and technology into all aspects. As well as I'd just like to mention that GCF is quite supportive on this kind of transboundary water security aspect. And we have created several water preparation or project preparation guidance for the countries who can better understand, collaborate, and work together. Feel free to access those project preparation guidance as well as water security guidance for peace and security. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Doctor. Your outlook is extremely interesting. And now, let's welcome Ana Maria Núñez. She's a specialist in water and sanitation at the IDB, Inter-American Development Bank. She shall be sharing thoughts concerning the importance of innovation in our field. Ana Maria Núñez, she's a senior specialist in the Water and Sanitation Agency at the IDB. She heads subjects of gender, inclusion, IT, and human rights. She has a master's degree in international relationships from Science Parties and in public policies from Georgetown. Welcome, ma'am. Well, thank you so much, Anita. I shall briefly address an initiative that we are promoting with the FEMSA Foundation and other partners, which is Fuente de Innovación. As an introduction, without trying to repeat what our keynote speaker just said, this is a session that deals with technology and transporter water. So we shall address a resource that transcends nations and borders, hence international collaboration is crucial. We know that climate change, demographic, in an orderly fashion of humans and human activities are exercising a never-seen-before pressure on our basins, specifically the transporter basin, because of their nature of being shared. They have complex challenges, hence we have to start thinking differently to be able to have access to innovative technologies. Hence, science and technology have an arsenal of solutions that allow us to face these challenges, which are monitoring systems, hydrological monitoring systems. Hence, the possibilities for all of us to be able to work on these themes are infinite. At the IDB, we promote, since some years now, the use of powerful tools like, for example, HidroBid, or IDB. It's a simulation of basins that we created in 2014 to guarantee the handling of these challenges. We've seen that to be able to follow that path, we have to guarantee that the services that are being provided, these are services that are developed in a collaborative fashion with the different communities. In other words, we promote through these innovative solutions equity, inclusion, and social justice. For this purpose, we truly need to think outside the box, giving space to themes like a change in behavior and social art, how this has been developed in these water linkages with the One Drop colleagues and the other partners which are part of this initiative. I could give you further examples, but here the most important thing is to underscore the need for innovation. Hence, in 2021, as the IDB group, including the branches of the private sectors of the institution, we developed and launched Fuente de Innovación. This is an example as concerning international cooperation can promote innovative solutions for the water challenges that we're facing, especially in transporter basins. Hence, through advanced research, technological research, and the implementation of effective rules, our association is available to all the stakeholders in this sector in Latin America and the Caribbean to be able to achieve a future with water and sanitation services which are resilient and inclusive. Hopefully, the deliberations today will inspire us to have new ideas, to have new cooperation, which will allow us to advance towards the protection and sustainable usage of our shared basins. Thank you so much for this opportunity. No, thank you, Ana Maria, for all the examples and opportunities that we have. And as I was saying, we shall explore different study cases or practical cases that talk about innovative aspects in transporter usage of water. We have the first speaker, Natasha Avendaño. She's a manager concerning the water sewage system in Bogota. She's a philosophy expert and different master's degrees in economy, public policies, and international taxation. Her career includes roles as superintendent of public services, an expert commissioner at an agency, and organizational expert at another agency with much experience in economic and collection arenas. You have the floor. Good afternoon to all of you. Let me share with you, I was going to address the floor in English, but I'm going to say it in Spanish. My presentation is in English. Briefly, let me share with you what is the water supply system in Bogota. And thinking, and as a matter of fact, when we were preparing this discussion, we were not only addressing transporter matters in terms of international transporter matters, but also transporters domestic in the specific case of Bogota. Yesterday, in the afternoon's presentation, we were talking about the percentage of water for the main cities throughout the world, and particularly in Latin America. Do we believe that they import from other bases to be able to obtain the necessary supply? And the answer is of a 75%. In the case of Bogota, it's a little bit over that amount, and it's because of its geographical location of the city. This is a schematic map of our supply system, and here you can see basically that 70% of water under normal conditions comes from the Chingasa system, which is found in the upper hand side of the screen, which is the eastern part of the city of Bogota, and where we are supplied when normal conditions are seen. In other words, when we have flow of water in the Chingasa system because of the affluences. And we shall delve in on this. And we have the capability of supplying ourselves. But it's outside of Bogota. As a matter of fact, there is a part outside of Bogota in the Dinamarca department in the north, where we have the system which is under normal conditions. It's outside of Bogota. It's within the department, as they were called in Colombia, but they're not in the system. And the only system is another one, which gives us a 5%. Hence, we import water, which of course makes us have a transporter local relationship with the other communities. Thus, we have much work to be done, not only on innovation to be able to guarantee the proper measurement of precipitation and rainfall of those basins that we transfer to the basin of Chingasa, but also to offset in a proper manner the activities, not only from an environmental perspective, but also with regards to working with the communities that carry out their productive activities in those basins, in the Bogota River and the Chingasa River, which allow us in a certain way to protect the soil. And this is schematic concerning how water works and how this transporter relationship works concerning these internal borders. And here in the Llanero Mountain, which you can see here on the left-hand side, or rather on the right-hand side of the map, that's where we see the larger number of rainfall that end up in upper rainfall, and that's the water which in Bogota is drinking water, and that's the water that is generated majoritarily. In other words, it's generated between the Amazon region and the Orinoco region, 50%. Hence, this is the second part of my talk. It transcends the Colombian borders, and this is why the importance of the ecosystem of the Amazon basin. And this is the second part, which is very important concerning this innovative transporter system. In other words, how to try to understand the dynamic of these other basins that transcend the Colombian geographic region, particularly in the Amazon region, and how conservation of these sources affect in a certain way the supply system of water in Bogota. Therefore, for us, in the Bogota supply system, it's crucial to guarantee the existence and the conservation. Amazon region and the Orinoco region, I have more or less 2/3 parts of this diagonal. We're talking of jungles or llanos or flatlands. That's what's fed into these flatlands. Therefore, when we go further down towards Brazil, towards Venezuela, where we see the Amazon jungle, that's where these concerns come about. If the loss that we're seeing down below affects ecosystemically the Colombian Amazon region, and therefore indirectly it affects the supply of water in Bogota. I wanted to share with you this, and these are the percentages that I was talking about in terms of where water comes from that is used in Bogota. And why is it so important in terms of innovation to be able to complement our measurement analysis on land with satellite analysis so as to be able to have a more holistic overview of the charts that we had concerning the behavior of rainfall, which have been, historically speaking, independent of the extreme climate issues. And how can we anticipate things? They will never be perfect, but we have to be ready because of climate change. In other words, to be prepared to know that events like we're going through at present, in other words, a reduction of supply, once again will happen, which surely they will. But how near are these and their intensity? Therefore, the use of technology is crucial, of innovation, to have tools which will allow us to be more assertive and to be able to make decisions in the mid and long term, which will allow us to assure water supply to the whole city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natasha, so much. What you have just mentioned is really relevant. Now let's give the floor to Juliana Corrales, who works for RTI International, more than 10 years experience in managing water resources. She's an expert in planning of climate change. She has given workshops in all of Latin America to ensure water safety. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. I will talk about the use of modeling tools to overcome challenges of multinational arrangements. Transboundary basins pose very, very crucial challenges among those countries that are sharing water resources. There might be political and institutional differences, legal and regulatory frameworks, also some environmental issues, especially in our ecosystems, that may impact those who are downstream, and this can be made even worse because of climate change. There are cultural differences that can also pose some difficulties for local communities and stakeholders. Many of the challenges I've just mentioned are faced by the Bermejo River Basin. It is a binational watershed between Bolivia and Argentina, and it is such a relevant area that both countries have been facing these challenges in a joint fashion. Legally speaking or institutionally speaking, in 1995, they signed the Durand Treaty and gave rise to the Binational Commission of the Upper Bermejo River Basin. It has a legal personality and has established a legal and technical framework to drive the sanitation of this water basin. Some economic resources have been supplied for the basin project. International cooperation has helped us strengthen our institutions and preserve our water resources. Despite this, the basin still faces some challenges like the operation of institutions in both countries, the quality of water, especially during droughts, and the lack of an integrated system. In 2024, we have been supporting them through a project and implementation of a program that is known as Water Alloc. We have a participatory modeling approach, and we use traditional steps in order to build the tools, the management tools, to be able to face some of the existing challenges at the basin, like integration, data integration, and transparency. We have implemented some data quality control techniques. We have assessed consistency and used methodologies to standardize data from multiple databases. We're also using similar tools to improve our water resources, to assess the different scenario. That is why we use Water Alloc, and we also forecast future situations regarding climate change, infrastructure projects, inform decision-making, among others. We deal with some deficiencies in technical capacity. We give workshops to make people aware of the different situations, and we teach them not only the modeling tools, we open a space where dialogue is welcome, where knowledge is exchanged, and where cooperation is improved. To conclude, I want to say that through effective application of technology, we can improve and facilitate data collection across countries. We can enhance decision making and lead to more sustainable and equitable management of our transboundary water resources. Thank you so much. Now we will hear about another case study. Alejandro Calvache, who is the manager of Resilient TNC Basins, is our next speaker. He comes from Colombia and has a master's degree in urban development from the Sorbonne, and he's a specialist in water basins. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is our last session. As you all know, I will try to be as brief as my colleagues have been. I want to focus on a specific case. You know that Nature's Conservancy has a priority in the area of conservancy and biodiversity. This framework is well aligned with the work we've carried out in the Amazon basin. There is not much to add about the Amazon basin. We're all acquainted with its relevance. It is many times referred to as the lung for the world. We know that we have to align water resources and the carbon storage capacity. What do I mean? The Amazon basin, in addition of its relevance, 8 countries, 45 million people, the huge participation of ethnic groups, and the extensive territory that has protected areas and indigenous territories is storage of close to 200 million tons because of connectivity within the basin, and you know that by carrying sediments and nutrients, our forests are healthy, even despite those plains that can be frequently flooded. There is a great relevance in rivers connectivity, and that's what we focus in. We have immense resources that might be interrupted by human activities, and that results in problems not only for the fish communities within the Amazon basin, but the crucial end of this, which is storing carbon. This is a work we've carried out together with 9 organizations. How are the basins being impacted with the river courses? What stops the flow of our rivers? And which are the results that we foresee into the future? All of these are alarming signals. How to work with local communities to keep the river free flow so that we can contribute not only to the health of these basins services, but to feed many communities. You know that we have very rich fish species and they are dependent on them. We are trying to identify our conservancy priorities in terms of availability and a fish species movement. In order to achieve that, we are analyzing the environmental DNA. We want to understand where the fishes move, where are the blockage areas, where do those blockages come from, and how to define the priorities in which we want to focus in upcoming years in order to protect, preserve, and ensure the free transit and movement of fish. And there is something that is even more valuable than science itself, and that's local participation. We want them to be involved in this effort so that they become let's say, owners of this identification exercise, and they really get to understand the fishing situation in these areas. Let me introduce the MIPES app. This is an online application that facilitates report of species follow-up and helps the user, the fisher, the fishing communities so that they can document their fishing activities, their income, where fish is being sold, how to improve fishery, and also contribute to this huge community which is well acquainted with the fishing situation in the Amazon basin, how to make sure that there is free movement of species. This does not happen in an isolated way. We're working with Amazon Waters, 29 organizations that are working along the same lines in order to guarantee that our rivers are healthy and that there is conservancy and definition of priorities, namely planning of the territory. Many of the changes are the result of weak planning processes. And this is the end of my talk. Thank you so much. Thanks, Alejandro. Now let me introduce Verónica del Rio. She's joining in line. She's an expert in assessment of basins in Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru. She's a civil engineer with more than 3 years experience in managing water resources. She currently works in Peru. She assesses basins and climate adaptation in Latin America. Hello, can you hear me? Good afternoon to all of you. I'm representing the Integrated Management of Water Resources project in Mataya, Mira, and Carchihuatara. This was implemented by the United Nations Program for Development, and I will share with you a summary about our work in monitoring hydrometeorological network in the binational basins. This strengthening can be seen in how our hydrological stations have been boosted in Colombia and Ecuador. IDEAM in Colombia, INAMI in Ecuador. On the other hand, we're also generating this information exchange process through a climate device, climate viewing device. We have this integrated tool that will allow us to, first of all, support sustainability of information generation that are related to water resources. Number 2, to improve management of shared water resources between the countries through climate alerts and very sound and updated data that will result in interesting studies. And we also want to contribute to improving our transboundary basins. And we want to strengthen our diplomatic relations and support a resilient regional community building in the face of hydrometeorological challenges. Information exchange is one of the first steps towards diplomacy. This information exchange, meteorological information exchange, contributes to target 6.5 of our Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. We also have the 6.5.2 indicator that has to do with transboundary basins that are subject to operational arrangements for water cooperation and operational arrangements of water. This is a safe protocol to transfer files among the different governing institutions so that we can send binational information about hydrological and meteorological data in real time. We do this real time and quasi-real time by the network of meteorological and hydrological stations. And this is within the framework of our national accounts. Variables to be shared are precipitation, temperature, and the river level that is translated in streams. Several organizations have worked together to ensure an ongoing flow, reliable flow, also to exchange information in an efficacious way. We currently have this document that has been revised and technically approved, and we expect this document to be signed by both countries by the end of this year. And in 2025, we will start conveying and sharing information. In Colombia, we will be using the Fuse platform, and Ecuador, we will do it through the national viewing device of INAMI. This is the web page of our project and the contacts in case you want to find further information. Thanks, Veronica. And next, we will hear about another case study presented by Andrea Gonzalez from Bogota region and representative of the water funds in this country. She has been the leader of the Biobasin Alliance project. She has been at the head of conservancy and ecosystem projects in high plains and wastelands in the mid-eastern and central parts of the country. Welcome, Andrea. You have the floor. Good afternoon to you all. It is a pleasure to be here. Let me talk to you about our experience, about how we were able to make actions be materialized. I will talk to you about this Water Fund Alliance, and I'm going to zoom in Colombia specifically. This means that we have been collecting different funds through the REDC platform, and a single purpose gets us all together. I'm going to zoom in Colombia. As I said before, I will talk about the Bogota Fund, which has achieved great progress in the region. It has been working there for more than 2.5 years. It has protected more than 8,000 hectares, and we have integrated very good and fruitful partnerships. We have our director of this Transboundary basin with us, and we also work with the Venezuela border. They face many challenges in Venezuela, as you all know. We have been working very strongly in more than 9,000 hectares, and many families have been benefited as a result. We work in biodiversity governance projects with the community. Colombia and Venezuela got together. More than having a collective action platform, we have a knowledge platform. Colombia has moved forward in hydrological changes in terms of science, isotopic studies, biodiversity protocols, and we have an online platform to generate that territory view in real time. And in Venezuela, as a result of this partnership, we have been working with Universidad de los Andes. We carried out a national water study, and the EDAM information has been extremely useful to us. There are monitoring impact protocols. There are 2 sides to this scientific work that results in joint work. We have to think about the region as a whole. The Maracaibo region, more than 135 basins, supply this huge lake. As part of our purpose, we have to reactivate many activities in order to benefit more than 6 million people. Cucutan, Pamplona, Maracaibo, Mérida, all of these cities are benefited through this project, and we are very attentive to the role played by the different authorities regardless of political challenges, and we see how the scientific component allows for this partnership. I worked in Pamplonita and Zulia basins that are great suppliers, as well as the Lago Maracaibo basin. We faced many difficulties in the area of safety and policies. We face environmental challenges. This picture was shared with me by Universidad de los Andes. It was taken by NASA experts, and this is the view of Lago Maracaibo or Maracaibo Lake. There is nutrient concentration. We have to follow everything up so that all the activities are thought around the Maracaibo area. We have ALMA, which is a partnership for Maracaibo water with a beautiful name that means soul. ALMA, we have gotten different investment sources, and we have a well-structured project to protect more than 1,000 hectares thanks to the Pamplona and Los Andes universities' contributions. Thank you so much. Thanks, Andrea. Now, we will have a conversation that will be moderated by Andres Sanchez from the OAS. We will identify common topics and lessons learned. I will be calling you all to come up the stage. Natasha, Alejandro, Andrea. They tell us that Juliana is having some technical glitches. Andres is an economist, an expert in sustainable development, and is undergoing the PhD program currently. He's an expert in shared basins. He manages shared water projects in Latin America and the Caribbean. Hello. It is a true honor and a pleasure for me to be here with you, but I face a very difficult task. They tell me that I have to convince you why science and technology are key to strengthen our efforts in just 2 minutes. I will do my best, I promise. And the first thing that I can tell you is that this type of dialogue was not held 10 or 20 or 15 years ago. After the pandemic, the world took us to this point. Technology is now more powerful in managing shared natural resources. We talk about the Americas of a huge continent. There are different ecosystems and there are different stakes at play here. The Amazon area does not only have to do with water, but with different regions in Latin America, the amount of nutrients that we have and the problems that we face. So decision makers have to be ready, be well informed in order to have successful negotiations, as Maponi has said, and as Sergio has also mentioned. Unfortunately, no decision maker will be capable enough to understand that without having these brilliant minds we have here gathered together, always in this spirit of cooperation amongst the different countries, and taking the great opportunity of being able to partner with institutions like FEMSA and to make them understand that the risk of investing in transboundary basins has gone down. And as we come to understand things better, hazards go down, risks are reduced. So along those lines, that's what we mean by water diplomacy, and we will be asking some questions to our colleagues. We will also call upon you to keep on working for diplomacy, to keep on having that vision from different countries, because has not yet had those ample discussions as politicians are doing, but that will happen sooner or later. Let me start by asking a question to Natasha. Tell me which are the conclusions of the Amazon region project in terms of water production in the Chingasa wasteland. Well, Andres, as a result of the work being carried out at our company and in trying to increase our supply capacity, the studies that we have today state that if everything continues to be the same, and I say the same in quotes, but the Bogota capacity will last just for a couple more days. So we have to identify the additional supply capacities. As I mentioned during my presentation, 70% of our supply under normal conditions comes from the Chingasa Páramo or wasteland. We have to clearly understand the impact that will cause. 25% comes from the Amazon region and 25% from the Araquia region. So if there is deforestation or if we're not able to recover those basins, even though they're quite far from Bogota, as shown in the cross-sectional view of the Chingasa region, they will be accountable for 50% of the water supply in the city of Bogota. So we have to be better trained in terms of monitoring skills, and we are also accountable for the growth of that city and for the search of new supply sources, and be wise when investing in such remote basins that supply us with water. Thanks, Natasha. Juliana, are you online? Because this question was connected to Natasha's. Based on what Natasha has told us, how do you think that the modeling tools will help us overcome challenges and better understand water resources at a multinational level? Well, I feel that all of these modeling tools play a crucial role in overcoming many of the challenges that we face when managing multinational water resources. Modeling tools allow us to have a comprehensive approach. Users of the basin can be taken into consideration in order to promote a more equitable and balanced management. We can also optimize water distribution by reducing conflicts that might emerge and by improving more our efficiency in our management activities. We can also support this effort by contributing with data, with simulations, with visualizations that will allow us to assess the impact of different management decisions in several sectors or basins, regions, being able to identify solutions that might turn out to be more sustainable and equitable for the participating countries. On the other hand, the modeling tools facilitate dialogue and negotiation because they offer common language based on scientific analyses, reducing disputes on resources availability, the participation of different sectors by contributing to dialogue and negotiation. And lastly, when the modeling tools are used, especially if we consider what I mentioned during my presentation, the different basin managers will be part of building modeling tools, and this will foster not only data exchange and transparency, but also knowledge transfer techniques, and will promote trust, communication, cooperation among the different stakeholders.
Thank you, Juliana. Talking about this sounds nice, but let me give Andrea with a further and practical and difficult question, because the idea is to hold these conversations. In other words, not things only to be in black and white, but in everything that is said, to truly understand what's behind what is being said, the funds, the agreements, people. And this is given by field management. And Andrea, with the transboundary between Venezuela and Colombia, which is a very interesting situation, what can you tell us about the strategies that have been implemented to be able to see interest, the interests of public and private interests in academia? You know, on paper, everything withstands. And truly, we come from the water sources, the call to action, which in a certain way we have to make decisions and even making mistakes concerning investments. And part of the strategy, as a matter of fact, I'm surprised with this issue of Venezuela, that in spite of the political situation, they had carried out processes on the land where university and academia, together with the private sector, you know, one might think that the private sector is not in Venezuela, and actions have been generated to focus on these priority areas. The boundary as such is alive in spite of it's closed, and there is a commercial dynamism which allows in a certain way for commercial aspects between Colombia and Venezuela. They need to continue having the stream, in other words, of avoiding risks concerning water. And I'm surprised when we talk about interventions in Colombia and not in Venezuela. You know, that basin, as a matter of fact, when the water fund was done in the Platform a few years ago, we thought about the Sulipa basin, but not with the vision of Catatumbo. And Cucuta, you know, provides water into the Maracaibo Gulf, which in a certain way entrepreneurs, donors, and institutions are donating for that hydro solidarity, and diplomacy takes place in that field. Of course, we've made mistakes on land. In the field, we need to measure things more, and especially to guarantee to the communities that there's something that's being done for the well-being of their homes. Thank you, Andrea. And this is the question, because it's being sisters and brothers concerning this focus. Remote census. With Juliana, we work much. As a matter of fact, last year, through the tool that they have, with calibration that took place in the field, well, we were able for Argentina to foresee the drop that would happen in the Rio Paraná. And they were able to negotiate with Brazil for energy rates and for them to have water to avoid a drought. Because in the basin like the Rio de la Plata, a drop of 1 meter doesn't mean that water is missing in energy, but all goods and services that are traded, you know, face an increase in prices. And 70% of soy in the world comes from that basin. Thus, we've promoted these thoughts to be interconnected concerning basins and the need to be able to work together, because in the end, none of this can take place if we do not work together. And this is one of the advantages concerning the economic crisis, that everybody starts working together. And let's hope that this shall continue. Another important theme, by the way, this is a question for Alejandro. It has to do with the following. How does species that happen in the basins, and what's the impact in the countries concerning stability, concerning the different ecosystems. Well, thank you, Andres. Now, this study concerning the environment, first of all, it wishes, and we all know, that it's important for you to know that we've lost many species in the Amazon. Degradation, the change in land use, the tropogenic issues. Of course, this has seen that there's a drastic drop in species in the Amazon. So what the studies looks for, and as a matter of fact, there's an important reference, there's a paper that was published, is to be able to fully understand with DNA testing where the remnants of fish are found, how they move throughout the flows in the Amazon region, and where we might begin working specifically prioritizing these and conserving these species. The idea, as you said at the start, is to truly understand the issue at hand and to be aware that there is an issue, but to locate it. It's located, it's localized, which will allow us to identify where the species is found, where we see an interruption in its flow, where there is an obstruction in the movement of the water flow that affects the transit of the species. And of course, it generates a barrier. And to be able to understand the causes of why we're losing these species. The idea is to complement this with the people, and for people to be able to document with this application my fish and how they fish, to truly understand how this affects the first item, which is free flow and the reduction of species in terms of amounts or quantities. Well, thank you, Alejandro. To complement concerning the Amazon basin, let me ask a question addressed to Veronica. And I shall address two important topics to keep in mind. Since I remember within my agency, there have been few special missions for facilitation purposes. The last one was in the Dominican Republic. Hopefully, there will not be another mission of this nature because it was an issue of water. Hopefully, this will not repeat itself. This is why it's important for you to be aware of the role that you may have through science and technology. In other words, better technology to be able to understand all of this. But there was a mission between Colombia and Ecuador with water. We're not going to mention the episode, but water and environmental management was one of the interesting matters that gave way to this binational project between the Cachihuayta Basin, which of course it's been able to produce fruits, and also the protocols of exchange of information with UNDP. In other words, this is why we wish to ask our colleague what has been done and how can we improve this exchange of information, keeping in mind that it's a relationship that maybe it's fractured because of different things which are not water issues. Well, thank you. As I said in my presentation, the exchange of information concerning water and meteorologic aspects is the first step towards water diplomacy. And to have sources of data robust in quantity and quality will allow us to understand how our basins work. In moments of drought, where there is more water and water quality as well, to get to know and identify sources of pollution. All of this will help us to plan things better, proper knowledge of basins, and thereafter we're able to make better decisions at a transboundary level. I believe this is the important step that is taking place within our project. From our baseline, which is data, and thereafter real, reliable data, we shall be able to make the proper decisions. Well, thank you. Thank you, Veronica. Let's continue with the second round of questions. Let me go back to Natasha, and I will ask her. the following. It's interesting what's been said concerning the Amazon basin and its importance, and maybe to understand that the only system that is affected by the management of the Amazon basin is it Chingasa or other basins? Well, what the study has shown, in other words, another conclusion of the study is that there is interconnection. Like, for example, there's interconnection with the distant part of the Amazon, in between commas. In other words, with that Amazon region that although ecosystemically is connected with the Colombian Amazon region, there is also a connection with the other supply systems. This is important for you to have an overview. Where do we get water for us? And how those water balances are offset. And on the other hand, although the study talks about a reduction of up to a 40% in the midterm concerning rainfall in the basins that supply Chingasa, there is an increase as well of rainfall in the basin of the Rio Bogota. Therefore, in this sense, everything is interconnected, and all positions that are in a certain way transforming due to what we're seeing at present, but at least in Colombia, we are, in other words, we've seen a materialization of climate change, not so drastically as in other capital cities have taken place in Latin America. But yes, this study shows that what allegedly there will be an excess in the basin of the Rio Bogota is what we might see it might be a deficiency in the wasteland of Chingasa. So we have to think about this as a system, and the system is a whole. And the interventions and procedures concerning recovery need to be based on nature and to truly allow us to use these innovative tools. And let me say the following, which is crucial. In other words, to be able to measure these innovation procedures in the different basins, to be able to have baselines which will allow us to identify if these interventions are as effective as the models say. Because one thing is to plan, because maybe these might be solutions, fruit at hand in the long term, but also to be able to measure and make these interventions more effective, because it's not only about reforesting and planting with the different communities, as I said before, but to handle things with the different communities in a proper way based on the activities that they have carried out, and it's their livelihood. So the importance of being able to measure and these baselines and to monitor will definitely make us become more effective concerning these dynamics. The aqueduct maybe has the best measurement system in Chingasa than in any other region, because anybody that measures does not have the different or the amount of monitoring points that we have, which are more or less 60. So it's important to use this information, to complement it from other information from around the world, to be more specific and more precise in terms of what we're facing at present, which is uncertainty and what will take place concerning climate change throughout the region. Thank you, Natasha. And you were talking about governance and participation. Hence, I would ask Alejandro, you said that there are 28 agencies that are working in the Amazon region, and you work together with them. How do you work together? Because there's diplomacy there, as has already been said. Absolutely, yes. It's an important effort. This is the type of associations that require leadership, that require agreements and programs, but there's a common objective, which is very clear and important in the Amazon. In other words, the ecological integrity of the Amazon and of the rivers. in the Amazon region. And with this clear in our minds, Amazon Waters defined a plan after a long period of time of agreements, diplomacy, and so on and so forth, within 3 strategic lines, which are quite important concerning the need of maintaining the Amazon and the connectivity of the Amazon rivers, which has to do with governance, first of all. And thereafter, conservation and prioritization. If there is something that needs to be done, these large groups, is to define the 2-3 themes where they shall be focusing in the short and midterm. And a last one, which is in reality, of course, which is the foundation, by the way, and the main cause concerning the affectation of the free flow of the rivers, which is a lack of planning in the region, and how truly we need to inform in a better manner decision makers, like, for example, mining procedures or hydroelectric generation, and which is truly the effect caused through these procedures before implementing the projects. It's difficult, but thinking about common well-being with clear lines, I believe this will help much management.
Thank you so much, Alejandro, for that emphasis on governance. Now let's ask Andrea about deforestation, one of the main actions in terms of conservation, and what has been the contribution of this river to the northeastern part of Colombia and to help relieve deforestation in Venezuela. Well, in terms of Colombia, the Basin Partnership has very, very strong allies that are many times demonized, like those who produce palm oil and carry out other activities in this region. Through environmental tools and voluntary agreements, we have moved forward. There are, let's say, 1,500 agreements, which are biophysical and economic projects. And when we carry out interviews with the community, we understand or get to learn that they feel threatened. We don't have actual statistics because on the one hand we have the Catatumbo data about deforestation, but the communities report different figures, so there is no matching there. Why? Because of misleading information. In the area or in Venezuela, let's say, many relevant projects have been carried out, but the deforestation dynamics is much denser in Colombia, in the Chama Basin, in the state of Mérida. There are very few reports about sustainable production activities, and there is also pollution because of the nutrient effects. The challenge there is to have better information because there is no match. Thanks, Andrea, for emphasizing those dynamics that are so relevant. And regardless of those moments where there are conflicts and they are clearly visible, we can also see that across the border there are other issues that hinder our activities. We run out of time. This has been a very interesting panel. I feel we carefully prepared it to provide you with a better view of water diplomacy, and let's give a hand to all of our panelists. I give back the floor to Ana Laura now. There are some questions from the audience. Maybe let's ask them. Are there any questions from the audience? We cannot see you. Are there any questions? I think everything was perfectly clear. Thank you. A very quick question. I know we're all tired, but I would like to learn a little bit more about emerging technologies that are facilitating the transboundary basins management. Anybody who wants to answer? Technologies, okay. I think Juliana would be the one to answer this question. Can I address it to you? I think the question had to do with emerging technologies, right? Yes. Well, I could say that now, as a result of AI, many applications are emerging. On the other hand, we have water resources management that will play an increasingly relevant role in, let's say, anticipating rainfall or extreme events such as droughts, floods, all these models that are the result of good learning or good sharing of data that can help us foresee what's going to happen and make more accurate forecasts so that we are well prepared to take immediate action. We can create a larger data volume in real time. So this is something that we will be witnessing as time goes by. In the last few years, we've seen that satellite detection, monitoring activities have been extremely helpful to take a look at our water quality, and I feel that this will also improve as a result of the use of this technology so that we can detect emerging pollutants and find a way to prevent that. Thank you. I would like to add something. We are working together with RTI and with the IDB in our decision-making processes. If we talk about emerging tools, we really have to understand what the country's governance is and make the necessary adjustments to specific information protocols. The information to be used will obviously have to benefit us all. So the systems, the codes have to be wisely used. And if we are to define the server, whether it's Amazon Web Services or Azure, I've been working with lawyers for the last 5 or 6 months, but that is also something that we consider to be innovation and democratization of information. We have a partnership with the U.S. Department of State, and we are working with NASA, with NOAA, with a team of engineers to develop and implement programs like in a suite fashion so that the different countries choose the models to be used for their transboundary basins. We have had different negotiations and we are trying to optimize our models through the use of AI. We are doing this together with the White House. I'm really transparent. As I said before, I have a limited range technology-wise, but since I'm working with scientists and experts in technologies, I know that together we can develop the proper protocols. That's why partnerships are always so useful. Thank you so much, Andres, for being our moderator, and thanks to our speakers too. Natasha, Andrea, Alejandro, Juliana, Veronica. Every case, every experience shared here shows a specific pathway, but also a crossroads and a question mark. We have to learn from all of that, and we have to step behind, be more creative, step out of the box, and innovate. Let me now introduce Marcello Bassani, an expert in storage from the International Development Bank, and he will formally close this session. Hello, thank you. I'm just going to take 30 seconds. We are tired. We are one day before the closing of this event, but let me tell you that it has been my pleasure to be part of the organizing committee for this event. So I would just like to take 1 minute to acknowledge your hard work. It's been truly wonderful. Thank you all so much. The water sector is a fragmented sector, essentially institutionally, locally, regionally, internationally. And whenever we hold this type of events, I get this hope that we have to create, or we will be able to create something better, something that will be well structured. Let me tell you that as a result of the seminars, we obtained the gold standard. 50% of our panelists were women, 50% were men. We had good geographical representation: Mexico, Chile, Ecuador, Argentina, etc. We had 24 in-person speakers and 11 who joined us online. So this hybrid format truly works. Now, I want to formally close this Latin America Focus program, and I want to thank organizers and co-conveners for this very relevant event in this geographical area of the world. And I just leave you with 3 words that I take with me: collaboration, dialogue, and coordination. Thank you. Thanks, Marcelo. And taking Sergio's words, water can be a source for peace or for conflict. It is in our hands to make peace prevails. Collaboration is crucial, as has been mentioned during this session. And during the World Water Week, we do need tools like technology and innovation. We have not yet answered that question, but we have touched upon very key questions that need to be implemented on a timely basis and as soon as possible for the benefit of the entire region. We want to thank all of our participants for their contribution. We have to encourage our collaboration, our cooperation to be able to face our water challenges in the area of transboundary basins. Please use the QR code and answer the survey. There is a QR code for you to scan. Please answer the survey. And don't forget to attend the remaining sessions and everything that we will post on the social media. Information will be available on the chat and the IDB social media. Thank you all so much. It's been my pleasure. See you next time.